Welcome to Talkin' Shit, the podcast where we get real about the unfiltered truths women face in the quest for perfection. I'm Jana, your host, a dietitian and fellow woman navigating the pressure to have it all together, the perfect body, career, relationships, and making it all look effortless. Who set that standard anyway? Here, we're calling out the diet fads, hustle culture, beauty standards, and everything else that keeps us feeling stuck. But we're not just venting, we're diving into how to break free and rewrite the rules on your terms. So, grab a coffee or a glass of wine and let's talk some shit. Together, we'll uncover how to live a life that's unapologetically yours. This is Talkin' Shit. Let's dive in. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment to share something special with you. If you're tired of dieting and feeling like food has more control over your life than you'd like, I want you to know there is another way. Inside my monthly membership, the Healthy Body Collective, women are losing weight and they're healing their relationship with food, balancing their blood sugar, and finally feeling confident and in control of their bodies again. This isn't about restriction, perfection, or quick fixes. It's about learning how to eat, how to support your metabolism, and how to build habits that actually work in real life. If you're ready for sustainable weight loss, calmer cravings, and support that truly meets you where you are, I would love to welcome you inside. You can learn more and join the Healthy Body Collective through the link in the show notes, or feel free to send me a DM on Instagram if you have any questions. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Talkin' Shit podcast. Today I have Kaylee with me. Kaylee is another dietitian. You guys, we're going to do another dietitian here next week as well, but I'm bringing in dietitians so we can really highlight the role of a dietitian and how we can really support you. And Kaylee is another one that is going to talk about a lot of different things for today. But Kaylee, thank you so much for taking your time and joining us. I'm so happy to have you.
Yes, thanks, Jana. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully we have some really exciting things to talk about today.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been a dietitian for about 6 years now, and I've done most of my time in private practice. I started out in doing some community-based things where I did a lot of presentations, and so I've always been drawn towards working with people in their everyday lives. You know, as dietitians, we have a lot of different roles. Some people are in hospitals and various places, but I really love helping people in their everyday lives. And that's kind of led me to where I am now. I have a remote private practice, and that's a little bit about my career so far.
Okay, so we're going to get into the topic of setting realistic goals. And I think you kind of led into that of like helping people in their real life. How does that connect to goal setting?
Yeah. So helping people in their real life, setting goals, a lot of times that comes down to bringing people back down to earth. People get really excited about wanting to make a change, which is great. And they have really good intentions with setting all of these goals that they're going to focus all of their energy on. And a lot of times when people come to me with this mindset, I try to, like I said, bring them back down to earth a little bit. Because what I've found with working with people is that when you start by having so many things at once that you want to change, it might be really exciting at first, but then it becomes really overwhelming and things start to crack and fall apart and you start to get a little discouraged. And then soon enough, you find that you've just given up altogether and you're right back where you started. Yeah. So I find it really important to talk to my clients about setting realistic goals and kind of defining what that means for them.
Mm-hmm. I can think of so many different examples of where and we want this change, right? Like I think as humans, we do desire change and we want it usually faster than what we can get it. And this is a human experience, right? Like I would say myself, you, like we've all experienced this of wanting to have change probably a little bit faster than reality will give it to us, right?
Yeah.
I love how you said to bring that back down, because how does that impact the motivation aspect then?
Yeah. I think that when people start off with having all of these goals they want to accomplish, the motivation is really high. Um, when I talk to people about adjusting that mindset, motivation often comes up later as a struggle. So I kind of like to think about it as realistic goals. I like to have three sort of steps, if you will, that I try to talk to my clients about. One would be start low and slow. So you just mentioned that people love these quick fixes. We like quick results. And counterintuitive to that, I find that low and slow wins the race. And so when I think low and slow, I think of a crock pot, right? Like we want to simmer in these things that we're trying to accomplish. Whereas I think overall as a society, we've become so used to instant gratification. So rather than a crock pot, we're using our instant pot and we're getting something done right away. And even, it crosses over to anything. Like if we are ordering something on Amazon Prime and it doesn't come within 2 days, then what's taking so long, right? We want that instant gratification. So when it comes to working on goals, that's when it can get a little messy sometimes because I introduce the topic, all right, let's work low and slow. Let's just pick 1 to 2 things that we can focus on now and get you really good at, make that a really good habit for you and stay consistent in that. And then that's when the motivation comes in. It's the consistent part where people start to lose their motivation because now it's been a week of doing this one thing and my problem's not fixed yet. Now it's been 2 weeks of trying to do this thing and I still haven't lost those 15 pounds or whatever it is they're trying to do. And so the motivation really comes in the period of time when the most important thing for them to do is to stay consistent.
Mhm. What can you give examples of like what would be a low and slow goal
Yeah.
they could set for themselves versus like the Instapot goal? I like how you
Yeah.
said that crock pot versus Instapot goal.
Right. I know. Bringing it home for dietitians, always bringing it back to food.
Yeah.
So, an example that really comes to mind is a few years ago when the 75 hard was really popular. Do you remember this?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So people were like, I don't even know exactly what it all was, but from a vague memory that I remember seeing online, it was like I'm spending, I think, 45 minutes walking every day or cutting out all sugar, cutting out all these things, which to some extent, like if you want to walk 45 minutes a day, great, that's for sure. But it was just, this huge list of things that people were going to start doing no matter what, every single day. And that completely overhauls somebody's life. I mean, you have to really figure out how to do all of that, and it may really get in the way of some things you already have going. Um, so I like to, when I'm talking to somebody for the first time, get an idea of where they're at, what's most important for them in this moment, and what's kind of the low-hanging fruit. What would be something that they feel confident in working on? Something that would kind of get them some rhythm going. For a lot of people, it's what can we add to your routine? And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people have a fear of going to a dietitian with the fear being, what are they going to take away?
Mhm.
What am I going to go into this meeting and walk out no longer being able to have anymore? And so I like to start with what can we add? And a lot of times that is starting with fruits or vegetables. A
Mhm.
lot of people I talk to
Mhm.
don't eat very many of those or even at all on a daily basis when we first start talking.
Yeah.
And so an example of those low and slow goals is, okay, I'm hearing you say that you want to, and for me, everybody that I work with primarily wants to lose weight. So that's why I keep going back to that. But I will hear people say, I want to lose this amount of weight, and I've tried all these things before. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to never have carbs again. What do I do? And I'll say, okay, so we've talked about kind of what you normally eat in a day. Out of, I'm seeing some gaps in maybe your protein, your fruits, your vegetables. What do you feel most comfortable working with at the start? And most people will say, I would like to start with something really simple, like adding in a fruit or adding in a vegetable. And having something so simple makes people feel really comfortable in starting and gives them a confidence to do it.
Mhm. Yes. I like to share that I would rather have an individual be an overachiever than and I'm air quoting, failure. And so often, like when we set those high or unrealistic or Instapot goals, we feel in the long run or in the short run, actually, too, like as a failure because we weren't able to keep up with it long term, or after 3 days of following a meal plan, we don't want to follow it
Mhm.
anymore, whatever the thing is. Versus if we set those like low and slow goals and you want to maybe on a really good day do a little bit more, now you feel like an overachiever. And
Yeah.
that really helps with building that self-confidence that we're really looking to build. And then usually people want to keep doing more from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like how you pointed out that if you set a realistic goal and you get good at that, then
Mhm.
you're priming yourself to be able to do more, and you're going to feel so good about yourself when you overachieve.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll have clients come back to me and they'll have that exact experience. They'll say, okay, our goal for the last week was that I start having one serving of fruit every single day. Guess what? 3 of those days I had 2 servings of fruit. I'm like, wow, that's so great. Was it easy? Like, how come you overachieved? And they said, yeah, it was just easy when I started getting in the rhythm of it.
Yeah.
So I find that to be um, pretty relevant.
Yeah, and I think that's like super natural just in that like step one that you mentioned, right? Like oftentimes we go from 0 to 1,000
Yeah.
overnight, right? Like we're like it maybe you're not doing anything and now you want to do everything. Like for our
Yeah.
system, just as a whole, as humans, that's too much. And the body's like, whoa, 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 I want to get back into my comfort zone. And so
Yeah.
that's also why oftentimes we aren't able to keep moving it forward, is just because it was too much. And that's okay. But we want to go
Mhm.
back to, like you said, of like, let's set those realistic goals so that we can see progress. That's really what
Yeah.
we're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're so right. When people when they jump in, they've got a lot of things going at once. They start to feel overwhelmed and it feels really uncomfortable. And when we as humans feel uncomfortable, we revert back to what we know and is what familiar to us. And if that's someone who is just trying to start on a health journey, they don't have that foundation yet. So they're going back to they're resorting back to the ways in which they wanted to get away from. So
Mhm.
when we have those low and slow goals, it allows us to build habits so that then we're in a position where we can stack habits, but we're not putting 10 new things on our plate at once.
Yeah.
And especially, I know as we as women already juggle so many things and so many roles. So something we could do for ourselves is not add so many new things at once and realize that if we are doing, if we're moving slower in the beginning, we're going to get farther in the end.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a more enjoyable process. We're not going to get burnout and discouraged. Whereas so often, like we were just saying, we want to try and do everything at once, and then sometimes we crash and burn.
Yeah. I think that's like the power of meeting with a health professional, I'll say. And I'm always going to advocate for meeting with a dietitian because I think what we do is really amazing work. And I know I'm
Yeah.
very biased in saying that. But, you said earlier, like we want to add in. And then I was also thinking it's so nuanced because sometimes, like when I'm working with an individual, particularly women, we actually look at what do we need to take off your plate, pun intended, right?
Yeah.
We need to take off of their plate so that they aren't so constantly overwhelmed and stressed out and they don't have the time for their
Yeah.
own health and well-being. So it's like this back and forth, right? Like when we're wanting to add in habits, right? Like we do want to add them in. We don't want to say no. At the same
Hmm.
time, when we're really working with someone, we want to like maybe we do have to take away some things because you do have too much on your plate. And that's also okay because we have to make time and like create space to give your health attention. Otherwise, nothing moves.
Definitely, definitely. And I've had to have some hard conversations sometimes with clients in the past where week after week after week they're coming back. I didn't do this goal. I didn't do this goal. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. Was there something got in the way? And in particular, I'm remembering one person who just was so busy. She was so overcommitted in so many roles. Some of them were even volunteering roles, and we had to have these conversations of, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you couldn't go to the grocery store because you were booked from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and you didn't even feel like you had the mental energy to order groceries. You don't feel like you have the time to think about our goals. Do you think that your current schedule is going to allow you to make progress towards this goal that you're after? And she had to realize, no, like I don't think the way my life is going right now is conducive to my goals. And
Mhm.
she had to realize that and then make some decisions of, okay, I actually need to back away from some responsibilities or from some of these extra things I'm choosing to do so that I can reach these other goals that are valuable to me, that are important to me, and kind of, assess values that way. And even in this past week, I had a client who she had a really stressful week, and it led her to making some decisions that she felt discouraged about. And we were unpacking that. And in the end of the conversation, I said, do you think you could ask for help? When this situation happens next time, is there anyone that could help you so it's not so stressful for you? And she kind of smiled and took a deep breath and she's like, I really need to ask for help next time.
Gosh.
And yeah, and if we can do that, then that, like you said, takes some things off of our plate so that there's room for us to do things that we need to do.
I think that's such a really um big point in this conversation of setting realistic goals is
Mhm.
it's like so and I've it sounds like we're all having some pretty frank conversations with individuals because it's always fascinating to me that someone will come in and want to lose weight when they are just maxed out.
Yeah.
And I will share with individuals, it's okay not to have the goal of losing weight right now as we start to really navigate like what do you even want your health to look like? Most
Hmm.
most women, and I will say actually men, I've had a lot of men experiences too, are just told, well, lose weight and that's the answer to this like health equation, but sometimes it's not. And I want people to feel okay with that because maybe in a couple months it will be, right? Like it just depends on what's available and where you are in those like stages of change, right? Like and
Yeah.
what's happening in your life. So taking that pressure off of I have to do this, well, you really don't. And we want to make sure that you are set up for success, not failure again.
Yeah. Yeah. And just as life changes with the different seasons, our goals and what's most important to us can change with the seasons too. If you're in a season where you are up through the thick of it with so many commitments, then that's not a great season to start 10 new health goals. But
Right.
if you're in a season where some of that has calmed down and your health goals are important to you and that's something you want to work on, then that's a better time. So it's kind of assessing, like you said, okay, you have this goal, but what's going on in your life right now? And do these things match up?
Yeah. Okay, so step one is start low and slow. What's step two?
So step two is stay consistent. And this really ties back to step one because we've been talking a lot about if you start low and slow, then you're able to keep doing it. But with staying consistent, this is where people feel like their boat is getting rocked a little bit. Because going back to the instant gratification conversation, whereas these days we're very used to getting what we want at a snap of a finger. So we start a goal, we're working on it for 7 days, and then it's just one piece of the puzzle. The whole puzzle's not together yet. People often want to be like, okay, what else can we be doing? What else can I grab for? Is there a skinny tea we can add in? Should I start doing HIIT workouts? What else can we do? And that's where we just have to look at the whole picture and say, we just have to stay consistent with what you're doing right now.
Mm.
And it might feel boring. It might not feel like you're doing enough, but you're actually doing yourself such a service by just simply staying consistent with this one or two things that we've started. Because if you can do that, you're building a foundation, a really strong one that will allow you to do other things. But we've really got to get through the mud of staying consistent first.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the boredom because I actually think that's what prevents most people from staying consistent is they get bored and
Yeah.
they need to change something up in order to get the results faster. And
Yeah.
then they end up almost like self-sabotaging. And
Hmm.
then they are looking for the next like quick fix and to give them kind of like this little spark of energy, and then that one fizzes off too. And it's really like the consistency is getting comfortable with being bored and doing the same thing on repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting, it's getting a new normal.
Mhm.
For, like I said, a lot of people that I work with, the first thing they want to do is work on adding in some fruits or vegetables. That's not something they do on a daily basis.
Mhm.
So when you're not used to choosing a fruit or a vegetable to be a part of your meal or to use that as a snack, it really does take a lot of rewiring in your mind to revert to those things. It's a whole new mindset to be doing that, to go from choosing a bag of chips to choosing an apple. It sounds simple, but when you're in it, it feels so unnatural to choose that apple when you're not used to it. So
Yeah.
you've got to make that decision again and again and again until it becomes what you're doing automatically,
Mhm.
until it's there. And sometimes I find this phase is where the motivation thing creeps up, particularly if I'm working with someone who has a goal where they want to start exercising more. And we're saying, okay, well, why don't you go to the gym once or twice this week? And they do good that with that for a couple weeks, but then they're coming back and I just don't have the motivation anymore. I just don't feel like it. And then we've got to talk about motivation, which I think a lot of people don't realize that motivation is so unreliable.
Mhm.
People think that motivation is going to drive them to their goals. And it's great to have when you have it, but it's not going to get you to your goals alone.
Mhm.
Motivation comes and goes. And I go back to, you know, looking at my own routines. I had to wake up and go to work today. I wasn't really motivated to do it, but I had to do it. I have this discipline to override my lack of motivation because if I don't go to work, I'm not going to get that paycheck. That's not what I want. That's not driving me towards my goals. Same with our health behaviors. If you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like going to the gym and that's the goal you had set, sometimes we have to override the lack of motivation with choosing to be consistent in our discipline.
Mhm.
So it's that staying consistent. We've just got to put the pedal to the metal, keep doing what we said we're going to do until we're in a really good rhythm with it.
Yeah. I it's so interesting because I used to be a motivation person. Like I'm thinking back like when I was younger myself, but then also as a younger dietitian, I just thought very black and white and thought like, well, if you just were more motivated, you get the results. And then, real life hit. And the more I spoke with individuals, the more I realized that motivation is not what we're going after. But usually it turns into like a value-based conversation because feelings aren't facts, but they are real.
Hmm.
They can tell us a lot about like what we're experiencing in the moment. But usually when we start diving into like, well, what do you value most? That can really lead to more outcomes than simply motivation. Because I mean, even the most successful people I know, like they talk about how they do not rely on motivation because it's so finicky and it is driven by emotions. And anything driven by emotions, we want to feel and we want to understand them, but we almost don't want to trust them because they can be sneaky.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so what's your third?
Okay, so third is changing your mindset. And that kind of summarizes everything we've gone over. Like, it's not about the Instapot, it's about the crock pot. So just carrying that with us as we move forward through the process. We want to change our mindset from looking at how we're going to accomplish our goals from what can I do that will give me the fastest result right now versus what can I do that I can do for the rest of my life. And that's something I like to focus on too, because when we start, like we were talking about the 75 part or just wanting to do all of these things at once, can you do that for the rest of your life? If not, that's okay. That just means we should adjust to give you something that's more sustainable so that you can keep the results that you're getting. And so that you don't have this yo-yo of health endeavors going on. And also changing our mindset to adjust into the fact that it takes time. And when we're talking about being consistent, we're talking about more than 7 days, more than 2 weeks, more than 3 months. I work with most of my clients for at least a year, and they're showing up every week or every other week, however often we meet, and they're putting in that consistent work. And a lot of times it seems like we're talking about the same thing so many times, but then a couple months go by and look how much has changed.
Mhm.
So that's kind of those three things I stick to. To set realistic goals, we want to start low and slow. We're picking one or two things and we're working on them slowly. Step two, we're staying consistent with that. We're not jumping ship when we're getting bored. And step number three, we're changing our mindset to this is a lifelong progress. We want to do things that are sustainable, that give us joy, that help us enjoy the process instead of what's easier is what are some quick fun things we can do right away.
Yeah. I love it. I don't have anything else to add to that. I think it's perfect. And it really helps identify, what step we're actually in and what we need to do in order to get the results. And it's not sexy. Like it's not something that's flashy. It's not something that's chaotic. It's very actually calming and it could feel boring. And it is the reality of coming back to earth and dealing with
Yeah.
dealing with the human experience. We are humans first and foremost, and this is what we experience. So I love that you shared that with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. And it's funny that, thinking back when I was first starting out as a dietitian and I knew that I wanted to help people do these boring things like have fruits and vegetables every day, I was panicked like, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to convince people that the answer to their problems is to have these simple things like adding more fiber and doing more protein, et cetera, et cetera." That's not going to sell. People are going to want me to say like, "Oh, here's this new exciting research that this has this new diet. If you pair it with this like that's what I was thinking people wanted to hear. But now 6 years into it, I look at it almost as my superpower because now people are coming to me like, I'm already overwhelmed please make this easy. And I can share with them, um, this is good news. It's going to be easy. We're just going to do these few things at a time. And people are often, they're always relieved that it's not going to be some crazy venture.
Yeah. Yeah. The things I've heard as far as like the complicated equations and do this at this time and I'm like, I don't even know. And I don't even want to try to know. Like it's way too much and it's not how the body works. So I mean,
Yeah.
it does not work. We need the simple. So yeah, simple and easy is the way that we get the results.
Yeah. And I always want to help people. We're thinking a lot more about food and our choices when we're meeting together. Like when I'm meeting with a client, I'm the dietitian, we're talking a lot about it, but I want to help them build these habits so well so that eventually they don't need me anymore. And eventually they're not having to think about these things so much. And it's almost like by mastering these steps, it frees them of having to think about it all the time. And then they can just go on with life. And it doesn't have to always center around a goal or food. It's just, it becomes second nature for them to have a healthy eating pattern, and it doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
Yeah,
They
which
don't have to track forever. They don't have to journal forever. It's just a small period of time where you're learning, and then we set you free into the world. And hopefully, it's my hope that people learn to enjoy food and enjoy being healthy.
yeah. It can be achieved, right?
It
But
can.
even going into what you said was like step one to start low, like to slow down in order to speed up, right? Like is exactly what I
Mhm.
heard you say, right? Like we have to slow
Yeah.
down and maybe pay a little bit more attention to our food or really be intentional with it and really see what that looks like initially, right? Because
Yeah.
we're practicing something new. But the goal is as you put in more reps, just like with anything, then you become that master and now it feels so effortless. And
Yeah,
that's really where the success is.
definitely. And I will say too, if you're somebody that's really struggling with getting going, even if you've identified a low and slow goal, like I want to start going to the gym and you're just having such a hard time actually doing it, how can you peel that back? How can you make it even more simple? Sometimes just doing anything as small as possible, doing that a few times will get you some rhythm going to where then you feel like you can make that next step to going to the gym. So, for example, for whatever reason, you have this seemingly thick wall between you and the gym. You're just not getting there. Do you think you could do do some push-ups before you go to bed? It seems like nothing. But if you do that for a few days, then maybe a few days later, will you feel like you could do some push-ups and a walk? And then when you do that, now you're getting a little bit more momentum. And then maybe you feel like, okay, this is feeling good. Now I'm ready to go to the gym.
Mhm.
So if you're having trouble getting started, try and peel back the layers, make it more simple, more simple. It's never too simple. It'll get you moving and get you that momentum, and that will get you running.
So helpful because that motivation we talked about is not created through thought. It's created through action. And that
Yeah.
is such a great example of how, okay, like we want to get you in action. So, how can we talk through those barriers that might be there and find a solution to that to where you are, it feels accessible to you and you actually do it? Because that's where we see, okay, now we start to feel that momentum. Now we start to feel that energy. Now we start to feel that, and I'm air quoting motivation, right? Like it's
Yeah.
change things versus staying in our mind that does not create more motivation.
Yeah. And speaking of staying in your mind, sometimes I work with my clients on reframing what's in their mind.
Yeah,
I mean, people are really mean to themselves.
really
And
mean.
we're not, I'm sure, I mean, speaking to myself, I do it too. I think we all default to that from time to time. But for example, I just had a client in the last week who started the session by saying, I failed, I gave up, I didn't do anything. And I thought, okay, why? I'm curious. Why do you feel that way? And she said, I didn't do any of the goals we talked about. And I said, okay, was there a reason why not? Because usually you're pretty good about it. And she said, well, I had this really stressful event that I had to plan, and it was just crazy. And I'm saying, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you had a lot of anxiety that led you away from completing some of these goals because you didn't know how to work with the anxiety. I'm not hearing you say you gave up or that you failed.
Mm.
And she was like, oh, wow. Yeah, I guess I didn't. She's like, I did try to have fruit. I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, there's something you did that you were trying to do. That doesn't sound like you gave up to me. That seems like you were experiencing something in your mind that next time you can work on dealing with that in a different way. And part of that is recognizing what you're feeling and getting acquainted with that feeling.
So true. That's where the power is, right? Otherwise, we're just identifying the wrong thing. And it's an inaccurate narrative that we're living by. And no wonder we keep getting the same results. But,
Yeah.
and that's what I truly believe that's one of the powers of meeting with a dietitian is even identifying that and saying, actually, you weren't a failure. Here's why, and here's what's really going on. So we can talk about the real issue, right?
Mhm.
And then we can see more progress. And it really changes that internal dialogue so that an individual isn't their own bully and they can see and give themselves credit for the things that they are doing.
Yeah. I mean, think about when you're at work. You don't want your boss berating you all day and telling you that you're not doing good enough. Okay? That relationship with yourself is important too.
Yeah. Well, Kaylee, I so enjoy this conversation. I think it's going to be helpful to so many because I know a lot of individuals struggle with this and it can feel very overwhelming, especially, with social media and just kind of a lot of the confusion in the food space just in general. So thank you so much for your time and expertise. We really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
This has been Talking Shit. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up or leave a review on the Apple Podcast app. If you want more episodes, click that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more, visit healthwins.org. Talking Shit is produced and hosted by me, Jana. This production is also made possible by the Community Media Access Collaborative. Learn more at cmac.tv. See you next time.